France, October 8, 1918. One man walks through a forest. Behind him, 132 German soldiers, armed, trained, alive, following a Tennessee farmer they just tried to kill. Nobody gave them that order. They chose it. His hands won't stop trembling. He left home a pacifist. He's about to return a legend, but not for the reason you'd expect. Because this story isn't about how one man overpowered 132 soldiers. It's about why 132 soldiers looked at one man and decided he was worth surrendering to. So who is he? Alvin York grew up under a single law. Miss your shot, your family goes hungry. 11 children, 1 rifle, the mountains of Tennessee. By 12 years old, York was the finest marksman in Fentress County. Not from practice, from necessity. A moving turkey at 200 yards, he could drop it clean. He never missed the same target twice. But 2 years before any draft letter reached his door, York stepped into a revival meeting. He entered as one person. He left as somebody else entirely. The Bible didn't stutter. Thou shalt not kill. No asterisks. No exceptions for wartime. No footnotes about patriotic duty. Thou shalt not kill. York held that commandment the way he held the ground beneath his feet, as fact. So when the draft notice arrived in 1917, York did something almost no one in his county dared. He refused. Filed for conscientious objector status. Denied. Filed a second time. Denied again. The third letter wasn't asking. York folded it, slipped it into his pocket, and walked to the field behind his house. He stood there a long while, staring at the mountains. Death didn't scare him. What scared him was returning home changed, sitting across from his mother, staring at his own hands, knowing what those hands had done. He reported for duty anyway. Somewhere on the crossing between Tennessee and France, he struck a bargain with God. He just couldn't tell if God heard him. France, October 8, 1918. Before dawn, 17 men slip through the forest without a sound. York is among them. Not in charge, just a corporal, following orders, doing his job, forcing Tennessee out of his mind. Their mission is clean. Seize the Dolville Railroad, sever German supply lines. Straightforward on paper. They carry a map. The map is written in French. Not one man in the patrol reads French. They press forward anyway, deeper into the trees, farther from their own lines, farther from anything familiar. The canopy thickens, light drains away. The rumble of their own artillery fades to nothing behind them. Then, voices. German voices. Close, far too close. They've stumbled directly into the heart of a German encampment. 1 frozen second. Nobody breathes. The Americans fire first. Germans scatter in every direction. The patrol snatches a cluster of prisoners, more than anyone anticipated. For one heartbeat, it feels like a win. Then the hillside tears apart. Machine guns overhead, concealed in the tree line, pouring fire down into the valley where York's patrol stands exposed alongside their prisoners. No cover, no escape route. In the opening volley, 6 Americans drop, dead before their bodies touch the earth. 3 more wounded. 9 men out of 17, gone in under 10 seconds. York scans for anyone to issue a command. The sergeant, dead. The second sergeant, dead. The corporal, down. Every man above York in the chain of command is either lifeless or bleeding out. No one remains. The machine guns keep hammering, and Alvin York, the pacifist farmer from Tennessee who begged not to be sent here, holds command now. The man who refused to kill is the last man on his feet. York doesn't freeze, doesn't pray, doesn't let his mind drift to Tennessee or God or that bargain he whispered on the ship. No time for any of it. There is only the slope above him, the roar of automatic fire, and 8 surviving men staring at him, waiting for someone to say something. He takes charge the only way he understands. No barked orders, no drawn-up plan, pure instinct. He tells the survivors to guard the prisoners and keep their heads down. Then he faces the hill, faces the machine guns, faces the thing that just killed 6 of his friends in a single breath. And he starts moving. Not charging, not sprinting, moving the way a hunter moves through the Tennessee mountains before first light, when the game doesn't know he exists. Low, slow, deliberate. Every tree a shield, every shadow a doorway, every crease in the terrain a lifeline. His body executing what his mind never had to consciously process, because he'd done this 10,000 times before. Not in France, in Fentress County, before dawn, when the family needed meat, and a miss meant an empty table. The Germans on that hill aren't scanning for him. They're fixed on the Americans below, waiting for the patrol to shatter and run. That's what happens when machine guns open up at close range. Men panic. They scatter. They fall back. It's not cowardice. It's biology. Every military unit in every war in recorded history has crumbled under surprise machine gun fire from high ground. York's patrol doesn't crumble, because York won't let them. He keeps pushing up the slope. Now, here's the detail most people have never heard, and it's the detail that makes the whole story click. York grew up hunting wild turkeys. Turkeys are not dumb animals. They're quick, hyper-alert, and they signal each other. If you shoot the bird at the front of the flock, every other bird explodes into the air. You bag one, maybe 2 if you're lucky. The rest vanish, and you walk home empty-handed. So you never take the front bird first. You start from the back. Drop the last turkey in the line. It falls quietly. The birds ahead don't see it, don't hear it, don't register that anything changed. Then you take the next one from behind, and the next. You work forward, slow and deliberate. By the time the lead birds sense danger, there's nothing left behind them to sound the alarm. York had been doing this since he was 8. He applied the identical logic to the German machine gun nest. He angled himself where he could see the row of gunners, but they couldn't spot him through the trees. Then he started from the back. 1 round. The last gunner in the line drops. The gunners ahead don't flinch. Battle noise swallows everything, and no one checks behind them when they're under fire. Then the next from the rear, then the next. Clean, methodical, precise. The same cadence he'd practiced 1,000 times in the Tennessee hills, except these targets were firing back. German rounds tear in from every direction, bark exploding off trees beside him, dirt kicking up at his feet. He hears the snap of near misses, feels the air shift when they pass close. And York, the man who begged not to be here, who filed twice for conscientious objector status, who feared not death, but becoming someone different, stands perfectly still and keeps firing. Not because the fear left him, but because somewhere in the roar, the smoke, the bodies of his friends sprawled on the ground below, the terror of dying shrank smaller than the terror of standing idle. He fires 28 times, 28 rounds, 28 hits. The machine gun position that killed 6 Americans in 10 seconds falls silent. Then something happens that no one on that hillside anticipated. Not York, not his patrol, not a single soul. A German officer rises to his feet. His name is Major Woolmer. He has just watched York kill every gunner on his ridge. Now he's coming down personally. Woolmer is no coward. He is no amateur. He is a decorated German officer with 4 years on the Western Front. He has witnessed things that would shatter most men. He has survived artillery bombardments, poison gas, infantry assaults across open terrain. He understands war from every conceivable angle. What he is watching right now defies comprehension. One man standing exposed under direct fire from an entire machine gun battalion. Not moving, not retreating, just shooting, calm, systematic, dismantling his position like a man with infinite time and nowhere else on earth to be. Woolmer watches his gunners collapse, one after another. He counts them. He runs the numbers. He studies the angle of fire, trying to make sense of what he's facing. He can't, so he decides to finish it himself. Woolmer stands, draws his pistol, gathers 6 of his best soldiers, and leads them straight down the slope at York in a bayonet charge. It's a courageous move. It's also the rational one. A single rifleman cannot stop 7 men rushing at close quarters. Before he cycles the bolt, they'll be on top of him. This is how you neutralize a sniper. You close the distance before he can respond. York sees them coming. He sets down his rifle. He draws his pistol. What happens next has an explanation so straightforward that almost no one mentions it. Back in Tennessee, York wasn't just a turkey hunter. He was a regular competitor in shooting contests throughout Fentress County. And the most critical skill in those matches isn't precision, it's tempo. How quickly can you lock onto a target, squeeze the trigger, and shift to the next? How rapidly can your hands execute while your mind holds steady? York had drilled for years, training his hands to outpace his thoughts. Woolmer's men are charging downhill, 7 of them, closing the distance fast. Most soldiers facing this moment would lose composure. Too many bodies moving too quickly at too short a range. Most soldiers would spray rounds and pray. York stays calm. He begins at the rear. The last man in Woolmer's charge drops, then the second to last, then the one before him. York advances through the rushing soldiers exactly as he advanced through the machine gunners, methodically, back to front, denying the men ahead any chance to grasp what's happening behind them. 6 rounds, 6 bodies hitting the ground in the span it takes most soldiers to pull a trigger twice. Woolmer freezes. He stands alone on the hillside now. His pistol is dry. 6 of his men lie crumpled behind him. Ahead of him, a single American with a pistol leveled at his chest, who has just accomplished something Woolmer's entire military education insists is impossible. Woolmer does something that catches even York off guard. He offers to surrender. Not just himself, everyone, the whole position, every German soldier on that hill. York studies him for a beat. Then he answers in the only German he knows, a phrase picked up from a fellow soldier on the journey to France because somebody told him it could prove useful. Quote 0. Quote, he says. Quote 1. Quote. Woolmer turns to his men and delivers the order. One by one, Germans rise from their positions, set down their weapons, and file into the valley below. York counts them as they appear. 10, 20, 50, 100. He keeps counting. 132. Here is what York said about this moment years later, when people pressed him on how he felt. He said he felt grateful. Not proud, not powerful, not like the hero every newspaper in America was about to call him. Grateful. Because every single one of those 132 men was alive. Because Woolmer made the choice he made. Because nobody else had to die that morning. The man who feared what killing would do to his soul had just endured the most violent 20 minutes of the entire war, and his first sensation when silence returned was relief that the killing had ended. He had honored his deal with God after all, just not the way he imagined. Now he has to bring them back. 132 German prisoners, 7 surviving Americans, and 7 kilometers of hostile ground between them and the American line. York runs the numbers. The captives outnumber his patrol 20 to 1. They are armed. York hadn't had time to strip every weapon. They know this forest far better than he does. They know where the other German positions sit. They know precisely how many Americans are guarding them. If they decide to test their luck, York has a serious problem. He solves it the same way he solved everything else that morning. He refuses them time to think. York places Woolmer at the head of the column directly beside him, close enough that every German soldier trailing behind can see their commanding officer walking shoulder to shoulder with the American. Close enough that Woolmer feels York's presence with each step. This is deliberate. Woolmer issued the surrender order. As long as Woolmer cooperates, his men will cooperate. Military discipline cuts both directions. The same chain of command that marched them up that hill now keeps them in formation behind a Tennessee farmer carrying a rifle. York grasps this instinctively, not from military doctrine, but from hunting. Control the lead animal, the herd follows. So he controls Woolmer, and Woolmer controls the rest. They push through the forest without a word. 7 kilometers through terrain York has never encountered, guided by a map printed in French, navigating on gut instinct and by reading Woolmer's face for the faintest signal that something is wrong. Twice they pass dangerously close to other German positions. York feels Woolmer stiffen beside him. Both times he presses the rifle barrel slightly harder into Woolmer's back. Both times, Woolmer stays silent. They keep walking. The American lines materialize just before midday. Major Buxton, York's commanding officer, stands at the perimeter when he spots them emerging through the trees. He watches, counts again. The numbers refuse to make sense. York reaches him. Buxton stares at the columns stretching behind this single soldier and back at York. He asks the only question a sane man could ask in this moment. "York, have you captured the whole German army?" York considers it for a beat. "No, sir, just a few of them." He is promoted to sergeant right there. Within days, the story detonates. Every newspaper in America, every radio broadcast, every conversation in every diner and barber shop from Tennessee to California. One man, one morning, 132 prisoners. America has its hero. And Alvin York has a problem he never saw coming. Everyone wants a piece of him. America craved a hero. York just wanted to go home. The reporters found him before his ship even docked. Reporters, photographers, anyone with a pen, a camera, and a story to sell. One man against 132 prisoners. The kind of story that writes itself. York answered their questions politely, said what needed saying, then returned to Tennessee. His neighbors threw a celebration. The whole county showed up. Someone asked what it felt like to stand alone against an entire German battalion. York went quiet for a moment. "I wasn't alone," he said. Nobody was certain whether he meant his patrol or God. Probably both. Hollywood arrived years later, long after the celebrations faded and the papers moved on to fresher heroes. They offered him everything, the rights, the story, his face plastered across America on posters, more money than York could earn in 10 lifetimes of farming. He said no. They offered more. He said no again. Went back to Pall Mall. Back to the mountains, the farm, the quiet life he nearly lost in a French forest on a Tuesday morning in October. Years later, he finally agreed. Not for the money, because they promised to tell his full story. He took every dollar they paid him and did one thing with it. Built a school in the mountains of Tennessee for kids who grew up the way he did. Poor, isolated, more talent than opportunity, and no path out except luck or war. He spent his remaining years there, teaching, farming, living the exact life he'd begged to keep when that draft letter arrived. Here is what the newspapers got right. One man, one morning, one of the most extraordinary actions in the history of warfare. Here is what they missed. He did it with trembling hands, against everything he believed, terrified, not of dying, but of becoming someone he wouldn't recognize. And the moment it ended, he walked away from everything it could have given him. Some men go to war and return as heroes. Alvin York went to war a pacifist and came back exactly who he was before. That's the part nobody made a movie about.